Hi, I'm Jane Marie,
And I'm Marishi.
and we're here today to talk about our first recipe in Operation Soup Pot Love Spring 2025, and that is French Canadian yellow split pea soup.
And the first thing we're going to do is talk about the tools we need for this recipe. If you don't have all these tools right now, just improvise, and we're going to try to get you these tools in the future.
Okay, the first thing that we need is we need a soup pot that has a heavy bottom. So use the pot that you have that has the strongest bottom on it. This soup has to sit on low and we don't want it to burn your soup. You'll need a good knife, and find the knife that you have, the best knife that you have in your house, and set it aside so that it's taken good care of. You'll need a vegetable peeler. Any vegetable peeler will work. We use a wooden spoon just because it sounds nicer. It doesn't sound so harsh. You'll need some measuring spoons and some measuring
The first
cups.
part of making a soup is always a soup base, and every culture has a different soup base that gives the soup a kind of flavor. And the base in European and French soups is made of the Mirepoix, which is onion, carrot, and celery, all in even proportions.
So today what we're going to do is we're going to take this onion, this carrot, and this celery, and we're going to dice them up into even sizes, and then we will be getting them ready to go on the stove. So the next time you see us on this video, you'll see us with our diced up Mirepoix and our carrots ready to go.
So the way my dad has taught me how to cut an onion is to first dice off the ends, rinse it with water so that you don't burn your eyes, and then continue to peel and chop the onion. So we're going to do that. We're going to start by chopping off the ends of the onion as thinly as possible. Then we're going to run this over to the sink, rinse the ends, give it a little rub, try to do it in cold water, and then continue to peel your onion. There we go.
Great. Now, one of the things that I always do with these extra pieces is I put them in a little bowl, because if you put these in your freezer and you keep them, you can eventually make your own stock out of them. Now, the one thing about cutting is always keep your fingers out of the way. And I always create a flat surface for cutting. And by creating a flat surface, you make it possible to cut safely. I always take this extra little outer skin off when I cut an onion. And I'm not throwing that away. I'm not wasting it because it will become part of a stock. Now, I have two flat surfaces, and it's always important when you're cutting to create a flat surface. And I keep my fingers back, and I cut like this. You can also do what's called the claw, like this. And just be very careful. Sometimes onions have that really slippery place on them. A knife that is sharp is safer than a knife that is dull. This particular knife is a Japanese knife, and it will last me a lifetime. I take care of this like it's my own eyeballs. And I get this all diced up here. And then I'm not particularly great at this, but it's gotten me through life. You don't have to be expert at things to do them with love. But as I'm doing this, I'm thinking about how nice this soup will be, how grateful I am to our Canadian neighbors to the north who brought a lot of French cuisine to North America and who combined that cuisine with indigenous foods and brought French spices here. And I'm really happy to have the chance to share this recipe, and that's what I'm thinking about. I'm putting good thoughts into this. Now, if you're ever scraping something off a knife, don't do it this way because you can catch your finger on the blade. You always do it down like that. So I scrape this off the blade, and there we have our onion. Okay.
So I'm just starting to peel this carrot, and again, we're doing it right into this bowl of scraps so that we can save them and put them into the vegetable stock later on.
We won't be making that vegetable stock today, but we always save. We don't want to waste any of the things that come off of our vegetables. This bowl of vegetable stock ingredients will go in my freezer, and I'll use it at a later date. We're just turning the carrot slowly as we peel it so that we get all of the extra outsides on it. It sometimes has a little bit of dirt. We're using organic ingredients this week. We try as much as possible to use organic ingredients. And that makes it possible for us to use these soup stock things without worrying about them having a lot of pesticides in them. One of the things that's important to do is that we not get our fingers in a place that they could get hurt. So I always cut my carrots at the top part in half, or just so that we have a flat surface. Carrots are safer to cut if you have a flat surface. And then I can stack them up and cut them in one fell swoop. There's lots of different techniques that people have, and we'll be having different chefs visiting us during this project who will improve on these basic skills. But these are the skills that got me through raising a family and home ec. So now I'm just stacking them all together, and I'm cutting these into these little tiny pieces. And I'm keeping my fingers and my thumbs out of the way. I'm angling my blade ever so slightly away from my hands. As you see, it's not angled this way, it's angled that way, so that if it slips, it goes the other direction. And so you can always protect yourself in the kitchen from things like this. Now I get to the end like this, and sometimes I just have to make those a little bit smaller, and I dice these up. And this is not beautiful. You can watch these wonderful videos of these Korean or Indian or French chefs chopping these things beautifully. We have someone in our program, Rebecca from Cortland, who will be delivering a lot of the packages. She's a chef. She's got techniques galore on this. But the idea is we get these up. They're basically the same size as the onions, so they cook relatively easily. And there we have the carrots. Please notice that I'm knocking this off my knife by going down. Okay, there we go. All right. Okay, so we're now doing the celery, and I take the ends off the celery just because they still have a lot of flavor in them, but they don't look as pretty in the soup. I take my celery and I slice it right down the middle just to make it smaller. It means that I've got one less cut I have to do. Elsewhere, I line it up. Now, some people use the rocking method, which is like this, and pushing the food through it. If you're good at that, that's a really good method to use as well. I am comfortable doing this with this particular knife because it's the knife I use all the time. And I can use my eye. You have to pay attention. You have to put your eyeball right where you're cutting. And the nice relaxing thing about cooking is you just put your consciousness right at the end of your knife. It's something that Zen masters talk a lot about, is where is your attention? Where are we putting our attention? And so my attention right now is on these vegetables. There's a Zen master who said, when you're cutting carrots, cut carrots. When you're cutting celery, cut celery. That's all we need to do right now. Okay, and there we have our celery.
So we've just started the heat on our soup pot. It's on medium-high. And we're going to start by putting in our fat. So you can use any type of oil you want, or margarine, or butter, or anything. We're going to use about 2 teaspoons of olive oil, tablespoons of olive oil, and slightly cover the bottom. Okay, that should be about enough for us. And then we're going to continue by putting in the vegetables. Scoop them up, place them in the oil. They'll start to sizzle as it gets warm. Get that last bit in there. Try not to waste any food. There we go. I'm going to use a wooden spoon and start to stir them around. Mix the vegetables into the oil. And allow them to start cooking for a few minutes.
So this particular point, we talk about sweating the vegetables. We don't want to fry them so they get crispy and dark. We want to sweat them and get them so they're kind of clear. And so we do this on medium high, not high. And if you notice them starting to brown, you want to turn your heat down a little bit. We want them to just get to where they're starting to look translucent. And this is a really fun thing to do with a child who you can have standing up on a chair. If you've got someone in your house, they can look at the foods and start to smell it. Let's have a look at that really up close with the camera. Great. Everything's starting to get a little bit translucent. We let it sit here for 2 or 3 minutes while we're over getting other things ready. And it's starting to smell really good in here. We can smell. You see how the onions are starting to get translucent. I'm going to shut off the heat here because we're going to go get some other things in our recipe ready, and I don't want this to cook too much. So this is going to get shut off for a few minutes.
So now we're going to talk about all the other ingredients that go into the soup.
This is a really simple soup, and in fact, when we're looking at these lentils, Arushi recognizes these. They're also used in India. Lentils are all over the world, and they're made to taste very different. We're going to be using split yellow peas. These are organic, and they were donated to us by Regional Access. We're going to be using our soup stock, and everyone will have a jar of this soup stock. You'll also get a recipe for how to make this if you want to make your own in the future, but everyone will get a jar of soup stock. There's also 3 additional spices that go into this. This is winter savory. There's also a little bit of extra thyme. Where is the thyme? The thyme is in this big jar. There's also a little extra thyme that goes in here. That's also in your soup stock, and that will be an additional spice that is added. And there's smoked paprika. This particular recipe is often made with a smoked ham hock, and it has this smoky flavor. We don't provide any meat products for you. If you want to add a ham hock to your soup, you can, but instead of that, to get that smoky flavor, we're using smoked paprika. You can also use liquid smoke. It's not great for you. It does add flavor. You're probably not going to eat too much of it. We also use bay leaves. These are bay leaves, and these go into the soup. You leave them whole because at the end you take them out, so you want to be able to find them. At the very end of the soup, when everything has cooked, we add 1 teaspoon of liquid aminos, and these are different amino acids that help develop that really complex flavor. These are gluten-free and vegan, and they really elevate your food. A jar of this costs $5.89 at Green Star. Don't buy it on Amazon. They charge you 3 times the price for it. A jar of this will last you a year. And so those of you who are getting your ingredients this week will get a jar of this. Keep it in your refrigerator. We'll use it a lot, and it will last you for a year. Okay.
So now we're just going to rinse our lentils, and in slightly cold water, you're going to soak them, fill them up, and then start rinsing them with your fingers like this. Loosen them up so they don't stick together. And they're going to get a little bit cloudy. The water's going to get a little bit cloudy, and that's exactly what we want to get rid of. So not only do lentils have what every agricultural product has, some pesticides or whatever, also it's important to wash your lentils so that you get rid of some certain amino acids that are just a little bit hard to digest. If you don't do it, it's not going to kill you. It's just good to do, good practice. So we're going to do this 3 times.
And these particular lentils are organic, so there's no pesticides on them. But if you're using products that are not organic, you want to soak them and rinse the water several times to get the pesticides out. Pesticides stay in your body for a long time, and they build up over time. And we want as much as possible to use good quality ingredients. Again, these lentils were donated by Regional Access, which is a direct food supplier in the Finger Lakes region. They donated all of our lentils for this week, and we're really grateful for their support.
I might do these just one more time, because you can see if there's still some bubbles. That means you should give them one more rinse. Just to get those bubbles out as much as possible. It's okay. What's going to happen is keep your hands there to hold the lentils. Get rid of as much excess water as possible.
And I'm going to put this in the pot?
Yep.
Tell us what you're doing.
So we're adding the lentils to our vegetables.
Or mirepoix.
So we've just started the heat up again on medium-high. We're gonna add the 10 cups of water. So make sure to use a liquid measuring cup. If you don't have one, please let us know. And I'm just gonna do this 5 times, so it's 2 cups each. And then shortly after this, we're gonna add in our spices that we talked about earlier. And at this point, we're gonna have all the ingredients that we need for the soup in the pot. We're also gonna add in our vegetable stock. Okay, this is 4. And this is 5. Okay, so now I'm gonna be adding in our spices and bay leaves. Just push those in. And then right after this, we're gonna add the vegetable stock. So now we just added in the spices. We're immediately gonna put in 5 teaspoons of our vegetable stock. It's 1, 2, 4, and lastly 5. Okay, so we have everything in the pot. All we need to do now is leave the soup on medium-high for like 3 to 4 minutes until it becomes a rolling boil.
So I want to talk a little bit about vegetable stock. This is one of the most important things in a soup recipe, and I'm going to talk to you about 4 different ways to do this. Today we're doing this with a powdered stock that we have made ourselves with all of these spices that we got through Operation Soup Pot Love. And we use this powdered stock, and at the very end we add a teaspoon of Bragg's amino acids. If you don't want to use Bragg's amino acids, you can also use soy sauce. I think it's a little better with this. And you can also, if you want to add meat to it, you can add meat, and then you can skip this. But these 2 things together make a soup stock. And again, you always add the Bragg's aminos at the end because heat can destroy some amino acids. The second thing you can do, which we have a donation of these this cycle, and we're going to be giving you one of these in your basket, but it's not for this recipe, is vegetable stock that comes in a can like this or a box like this from Wegmans. This is actually kind of expensive. These cost about $4. It's an expensive way to do vegetable stock. We have these donated, so we're giving them to you to use, but I don't tend to use this because it's expensive. This is much, much cheaper. This ends up to being about 5 to 10 cents per soup, and this ends up being about $6 per soup. This is a lot cheaper. The third thing you can do if you want is you can buy from this company, which is called Better Than Bouillon. They make a lot of different flavors. This is their seasoned vegetable base, and this costs about $5 or $6. The price keeps going up, but it lasts for about 8 or 10 soups. I think it's wonderful. It's convenient. If you don't want to do this method, but it's actually a little more expensive. They also make a vegetarian no beef base. It tastes like beef, but it's vegetarian. I don't particularly like it. I'm a vegetarian. It tastes a lot like beef. People who don't know that I'm a vegetarian think it's got a beef base, but it's vegetarian. There's this one right here, which is a culinary Better Than Bouillon Italian herb base. And it's also really nice if you're making a spaghetti and you want to add a little bit of base to it. These are all shelf stable, but I keep them in the fridge after I open them. The real gold standard of how to make a soup stock is to save all of your scraps over time. And we do this in this recipe. Every time you're making soup, you rinse off your vegetables carefully, and then you save all of your scraps. You put them in the freezer so they stay good. Immediately after this will go in the freezer. And when I've got a good amount of them, I take them, I put them on my stove, I add 4 or 5 cups of water to them, or 6 or 8 cups of water. I give them a good boil and then a simmer for several hours, and I drain off the liquid, and I've got a beautiful soup stock like this right here. That's really the best way to make your stock, but not everybody has time to do that. The peelings of onions, if you've got organic onions, make it a really nice, beautiful golden color. So these are our soup stocks, and for this recipe, we're going to be using the soup stock and the brags to make our soup stock. Okay, thanks.
So we've let the soup boil on high for about 3 to 5 minutes, and you can see that it's a rolling boil now. And so what we're gonna do is turn our heat down to low, cover it with a lid, and keep it like that for a few hours. So the best soups are cooked on high for a few minutes and then simmered for a few hours. And while this happens, you can stay in your kitchen, enjoy the smells, and clean up, just enjoying your soup. And you can see that the water level is going to go down a little bit, and that's supposed to happen. It's just going to keep simmering.
So we've only been simmering this for a short time, but it smells so good. And I just had to have a peek at it. It smells smoky and wonderful. And what we want to do is we want to have this just ever so slightly simmering. We don't want it boiling, we just want it to be lightly simmering because we have to cook those peas and they have to cook for a long period of time. So I'm putting this at kind of medium low, and it just smells so wonderful. We can see the thyme in it. And now we're going to cover it back up and let it sit for about another hour and a half. And we're going to go off and get some things for this week's boxes. We have the last step. Our soup is done. It's been sitting here for a couple of hours. All the peas have fallen apart. They're nice and soft. And I'm going to add just about a teaspoon of brags, just about like this. That's probably about a teaspoon. I'm going to stir it in. After I'll taste everything and see how it tastes. I can turn this off. And we will add salt and pepper to taste. We always take out the bay leaf. We don't need to leave that in there. It's one of the reasons we don't crumble it up, so that we can find it. If you end up with a little piece in your soup, you just set it aside. But here's our bay leaf somewhere in there. There's the bay leaf. We just take that out. It's done its job. It's finished. I'll feed that to my chickens. And then we'll take a little spoonful of this soup and see. I like to do this with a little plate. Let's get a little plate out of here, because otherwise it can burn your face. Hold that low. There we go. I'll just go like this. Take the soup, spread it out. That way I can see it's not too hot when I taste it. But look how nice that looks. I think that's going to need a little bit of salt, and I'm going to add salt to it. And the salt is where? Where's the salt? It's here. Here's my salt. And I think it needs about a good bit of salt, because I always let salt be added. My husband doesn't like salt. If you have somebody who has a low salt diet, it's good salt can be added at the end. Once you've added salt, you can't take it out. I also like to add fresh ground pepper to everything I cook. And I add that at the end. It just kind of gives it a nice bunch. We could do a lot of things to dress this soup up. We could add a little bit of yogurt to the bowl. We could sprinkle some olive oil on it. We could put some fresh chopped parsley on it. We could put in a raw egg. Sometimes people put in a raw egg and not a raw egg, a boiled egg, and they cut it up. It's very delicious that way. Lots of ways you can dress up a soup, but we are going to eat this soup just as it is with some bread and butter. Bon appetit. So in your basket this week, you're going to notice a vegetable. It's not part of our recipe, but we're putting it in everybody's basket so you have a chance to try something new. This is a watermelon radish, and it's really beautiful. I've just scrubbed it with a brush to get all of the dirt off of it so that I can put it in my soup stock. And you're going to come over here and watch how I slice it. I'm going to take the end off each end, and then those pieces can go in my soup stock bucket. And then I'm going to just take my knife and take the edges off. I could use a vegetable peeler, but this is actually so thick that I'm just going to use the knife. Take the edges off. And this is a vegetable that is really fun to eat. It's very good for you. This is organic. It was donated by Remembrance Farms out near Trumansburg. And it is called a watermelon radish. And in just a minute, you'll see why it's called a watermelon radish. So you see, I've peeled it all, and I cut it open. And look how pretty that is. It's so beautiful. And each one is a little bit different. And I just cut it up into some slices. I'll tell you what this is really good with, is to take just a little bit of our soup stock powder and put a little bit of our soup stock powder on a plate like this. Just about like that. And just dip this in the soup stock powder and eat it. Arusha, you want to try it in the soup stock powder?
This one really looks like a watermelon.
Yeah, Arushi's is a little bit brighter. We'll put a couple of these in everybody's box. We encourage you to try them. It's really healthy for you.
That's so good.
It's so good.
So good.
Isn't it so good? Okay.